Adele is the biggest recording artist on the planet and an era-defining superstar. But how exactly did she become so famous? Where was she born and raised? What were her family like? How was she discovered? Were there any clues in her childhood which pointed towards her becoming the international superstar she is today? So many questions, let's find out. Penny Adkins, a North London girl, had only just left school when she met Mark Evans, a window cleaner from South Wales, in London in the summer of 1987. They'd just been dating a short while when Penny fell pregnant. Adele Laurie Blue Adkins was born on May 5th, 1988 in the North Middlesex Hospital in Edmonton, North London. Penny was just 18 years old. She had intended to study art and design at university but abandoned these plans to raise her young daughter. For the first 9 years of her life, Adele grew up in a council flat in Tottenham, a working class area of North London. It is one of the most ethnically diverse areas in the whole of Britain. It has a strong community spirit but also has high rates of poverty and unemployment. The area is also infamous for the Broadwater riots of 1985 and the Tottenham riots of 2011. Penny's family all lived close by, so Adele grew up surrounded by her cousins. Unfortunately, Penny and Mark split up when she was just 9 months old. Adele attended primary school in Tottenham and would spend her summers with her paternal grandparents in South Wales. The young Adele was raised in an artistic and creative environment. Her mother was a masseuse and furniture maker and played lots of music around the house, including The Cure and Jeff Buckley. Adele was such a big fan of British soul singer Gabrielle, her mother made her an eye patch to mimic the singer. Penny would put her young daughter standing on the table to belt out Gabrielle's #1 hit, Dreams. And in a full circle moment, Adele invited Gabrielle to support her at her Hyde Park concert in the summer of 2022. And when Adele was 8, she discovered girl power and the Spice Girls. And in an interview with the BBC from 2009, she said, "I was the biggest Spice Girl fan ever. Jerry was my favourite, but then she broke my heart and left, so now Mel B is my favourite." Adele left Tottenham when she was 9 years old and moved briefly to Brighton before settling in Brixton, South London, and later in West Norwood, where she lived in a flat above a shop. Around this time, a family friend who also happened to be a professional singer recognised Adele's vocal talent and advised her to pursue it. Soon after that, her mother heard about a certain performing arts school that would set the young Adele firmly on the road to stardom. The Brit School was the only free performing arts school in Britain and was located near Croydon, not too far away from where Adele was living. After beating off intense competition to secure a place, she started there in September 2002. At the time, the Brit School was starting to become very famous in the wider world. Former students Katie Melua and Amy Winehouse were both breaking through in 2004. Future stars Leona Lewis and Jessie J were both students at the school at the same time as Adele. According to Sean Smith's biography on the superstar, Adele received a distinction for her GCSE music. She stayed on at the Brit School for 6th form, and from then on, 80% of her school time was devoted to music. And on weekends, Adele worked in her aunt's cafe in Stamford Hill and briefly worked in a Gap store, but she hated it so much she left after 4 days. At the Brit School, students were taught different genres of music and trained to use music technology such as Logic Pro. Her peers from the school remember Adele was always hanging around practicing her guitar. The students were encouraged to write their own songs, and Adele wrote Daydreamer and Hometown Glory whilst at the school, 2 songs which would go on to feature on her debut album 19. One of Adele's school friends posted a video of her singing Daydreamer and a 3-track demo she had made as part of a school project on naughty social networking platform MySpace. And it was this 3-track demo which would ultimately get her signed and kickstart her music career. Adele graduated from the school in May 2006. Around this time, Adele caught the attention of top A&R man Nick Huggett from XL Records. Adele had been brought to Huggett's attention through an A&R scout who had been searching through MySpace for acts. He first listened to Adele's music whilst he was in Barcelona working with another XL act, Dizzy Rascal. "The emotion in her voice is one of those things you never forget," he said in an interview with Q magazine in 2017. Nick quickly emailed her through MySpace asking her if she was signed. Apparently Adele's response was, "Signed to what?" I love Adele and everything, but it's really hard to believe that she didn't understand basic music industry terminology at the time. She'd studied the music industry extensively at the Brit School, and the school had very close ties with record labels also. According to Adele, at the time she didn't know who XL were, and the only record company she was aware of was Virgin. In my humble opinion, this little story was more than likely manufactured by her PR people in order to make good copy. Adele also later said that at the time she didn't think she was going to be a singer and was planning to work in A&R in a record company, discovering and signing music acts. Surprisingly, Nick was not impressed that she was a Brit School graduate. "I grew up in Croydon, so I was a bit sneery about the Brit School. It's where Dane Bowers from Another Level came from. Back then you didn't think it was for real musicians." Nick said in an interview with Q magazine in 2017 that Adele initially wasn't responsive to his messages. "I didn't really get her to respond to my messages on MySpace. I'd signed Jack Panate to XL and they were friends. He told her, 'He's alright, you should have a meeting with him.'" Eventually they met at XL's Notting Hill offices in summer 2006, and Adele brought her male guitarist friend with her, just in case Nick really was some strange guy off the internet. XL may have been an independent label, but they had some major acts on their books, including the White Stripes, Dizzy Rascal, Vampire Weekend, and The Prodigy. Nick was open from the beginning that he was eager to sign her and curious as to who was managing this fledgling talent. Adele admitted she didn't have a manager, and Nick suggested she meet with Jonathan Dickens. Jonathan Dickens already managed Jamie T and Jack Panate and came from a family who were hugely influential in the British music industry. His grandfather Percy Dickens invented the music charts in 1952, and his uncle Rob Dickens was head of Warner UK for years and signed the Corrs and Enya. In an interview years later, Jonathan Dickens recalls that fateful first meeting with the budding superstar. "We had one meeting and just got on great. She was 18, just out of college, and wanted to make a career in music. We started working together in early June 2006, and eventually we signed her to XL at the end of September that year." Adele is incredible. For a girl who's just turned 20 years old, it's unbelievable how focused she is in terms of what she thinks is right for her career. In an interview in 2008, Adele said she only had 3 songs written when she first signed to XL. That would soon be rectified when the recording of her album began in the summer of 2007. Around that time, in a session where Adele was recording backing vocals for Jack Panate, she met with the music producer Jim Abbas. Jim had achieved huge success with the Arctic Monkeys and Kasabian and would go on to produce the bulk of Adele's debut album. She also wrote Chasing Pavements with Egg White, a former member of the 80s band Brother Beyond. He was best known at the time for writing Leave Right Now for Will Young. He's since worked extensively with Pink and Celine Dion, among many others. They also co-wrote Tired and Melt My Heart to Stone together. In an interview with Blues and Soul magazine in 2008, Adele had this to say about working with Egg White. "I wanted to work with Egg because I wanted that radio song. I wanted that big kind of commercial tune to get me noticed by people. While I'd happily still sing to 10 people in a pub like I used to, I do want as many people as possible to hear my music. Not so they'd buy my album, but because I wanted to be known as a musician. So Chasing Pavements was quite intentional, though the way the song itself came about definitely wasn't. And it was her manager Jonathan Dickens' idea to record Bob Dylan's Make You Feel My Love. Adele was initially reluctant to do a cover, but was won over by the quality of the song and the lyrics. She also co-wrote Cold Shoulder with Sasha Scarbeck, who had written You're Beautiful for James Blunt and would later write Wrecking Ball for Miley Cyrus. And super producer Mark Ronson was called on to produce the track and give the album some much needed rhythm. XL started working on creating a buzz around Adele months before her official launch. To gain live experience, she supported Jack Panate and Jamie T in smaller venues around London. In June 2007, she made her first ever TV appearance on Britain's highly respected Jools Holland music show. Hometown Glory, her first single, was released as a limited edition promo song on Monday, October 22nd, 2007. The track was intended to build some buzz around her before her big album launch in early 2008. It was also released on Jack Panate's Pacemaker label, which helped align Adele with an artist who already had a profile and a following. And at the end of that year, Adele was awarded the Brit 2008 Critics' Choice Award, an award for the artist most likely to break through in the new year. She also topped the BBC Sound of 2008 poll, another award which chose the most promising music acts for the year ahead. At the time, these awards were highly prestigious and received widespread media attention. And in early January 2008, when Chasing Pavements was released, it rocketed to number 2 in the UK charts, and the album 19 became a number 1. The album did receive mostly positive reviews, but the NME gave the record a disappointing 5 out of 10. Around this time, celeb blogger Perez Hilton was writing about Adele, and interest was starting to build in the soul songstress stateside. The XL operation in the US was not advanced enough to execute the launch of a major new artist. The independent label knew they needed to partner with an American major label to launch Adele's career stateside. And Nick Huggett, who had discovered Adele, had since moved on to Sony Records. So a gig was booked for Adele in Joe's Pub in New York City on the 17th of March 2008, with Sony record executives getting an invite. They were so impressed with her performance, they signed her up the very next day. Adele got an early boost in America when Chasing Pavements was selected for a season finale of Grey's Anatomy in May 2008. The episode was watched by 18 million and helped raise her profile stateside. Chasing Pavements was released in June 2008 in the US, followed by the album a few weeks later. But 19 debuted at a rather disappointing 61 on the Billboard album charts and hung around the lower end of the list for the next few months. I want as many people as possible to hear my music, and that's why I want to come here and do the work and get my music out to a lot of people, but I don't think it is the end of the world if you don't do well in America. But Sony didn't give up on her, and they used their clout to secure a performance spot for Adele on Saturday Night Live on the 18th of October 2008. Adele has since been quoted as saying it was the night that changed her life. The US was in the throes of a presidential election at the time, with Barack Obama going up against John McCain, whose vice presidential running mate was Alaskan Governor Sarah Palin. Comedian Tina Fey had been doing impressions of Palin in the weeks leading up to the show, and Palin surprisingly agreed to come on in person. Through these fortuitous series of events, that episode with Adele performing Chasing Pavements and Cold Shoulder was watched by 17 million, the show's highest ratings for 14 years. Before the show, 19 was at number 40 on US iTunes, but the very next day it stormed to number 1. And the following week, 19 jumped 35 places to number 11 on the Billboard 200, and it started to look like Adele's American dream was coming true. 2008 was such a pivotal year for Adele, where she laid firm foundations for the rest of her astonishing career. It also set the stage for the stratospheric success she was to experience 3 years later with 21. But that's a whole other story for another time. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts on anything in this video, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos.